All right. Good morning, everyone. Really glad to be hosting you here for OpenSSF Day amidst a bunch of other amazing content here on the periphery of the Open Source Summit. I wanted to just kind of give you a little bit of an opening to somewhat of the day, but kind of a little bit of an update of what we've been doing here at the OpenSSF. And I figured I would start, since some of you probably are still at the beginnings of your kind of journey into what's going on in this circus that we call the OpenSSF. I know we've got our formal mission and scope and things like that, but when I talk about what we do, I like to kind of frame it this way, that we're really a multi-stakeholder effort, and this is so important in open source to be something more than just the product of one company or the product of a small number of developers, but to actually be a broad-based effort, a consortium, a group that's focused on addressing the gaps in measuring and addressing the security flaws and issues in open source software and the broader software supply chain. I mean, open source software, all of us know instinctively, and it's been well quantified now in several studies, is that dark matter of the software world. It's the part of the software below, it's the part of the iceberg, below the sea level that actually supports so much of of even the proprietary software world. And it's at the core. And so when there are security issues, both specific ones and then systemic ones across that, it affects the entire software supply chain, and so we've all got to care about it. So we exist to try to address both the specific issues and the systemic issues. We're also here to facilitate collaboration, drive collective sense-making, trying to understand where the problems are and how deep they are, and then provide real tools and services to go and accelerate the adoption of better security for everybody. And not to start with here's our org chart, but to try to understand how we think about organizing ourselves to address these. Many of you know about the different working groups we have underway that are thematically kind of organized, and then within each of those working groups, different initiatives focused on addressing vulnerabilities, on looking for new ways to do disclosure, on security tooling, which has really been focused on SBOMs to date. But really, if you understand kind of the top level, it's easier to figure out where you might apply some of your energies, and to understand as well, how are we accountable to each other? Right. For example, in the Securing the Software Supply Chain Working Group, that's where we have folks working on SALSA and on S2C2F and on other related technologies working together to try to harmonize their efforts across all of those. Recently, we had an election for our Technical Advisory Council, so I'd like to congratulate the new members and the returning members of the TAC. Thank you very much. Their photos are here. Also, in particular, wanted to congratulate Arnaud Lehor for being elected as Vice Chair, and Krob, of course, for being elected chair of the TAC. So thank you very much, all of you, for your service and your contributions. As well, to Luke Hines, who is elected as a representative of the broader security community to the OpenSSF board. Because making sure that our board of directors, our governing board, understands the issues not just from their own company's points of view, but from the broader industry is really important. So we have this role to do that. Now I'm going to dive in just very quickly at some specific high points from the last few months, and actually a few even going back to since the last time we met, our very first OpenSSF Day in Austin. But the biggest news recently has been the release of SALSA 1.0 as a final spec. Now, nothing in this world is ever final, and done. There will be continued work in this domain. SALSA stands for the security levels for software artifacts. It's a framework for understanding, in the 1.0 spec, the build environments that were used to assemble, compile the source code to build, and then assemble the bits into the final package as a way to provide clear provenance to these final packages all the way back to the original source code. And this technology has already been deployed by GitHub combined with SigStore into the NPM ecosystem to provide provenance and traceability for that ecosystem. So showing that we're not just coming up with kind of standards in the blue sky and hoping somebody adopts them one day, but this stuff is directly being deployed as it's being defined, as it's being kind of put through a standards process, which we hope establishes it as an industry-wide standard and an international standard for doing the kinds of things that we're going to hear a little bit about this later, but the regulators are going to start to ask us to start to show, right? Provenance for our code, traceability through the supply chain, and high integrity assurances that the software we're running is, that we think we're running is what we're actually running. So congrats to everybody who worked on the SALSA team, and we put out some great press about this earlier. Of course, this also complements the work that the SIGSTOR community has done. SIGSTOR hit 1.0 in September. It's gone on to become pretty much the standard for how the cloud native ecosystem signs their artifacts and distributes them. Many other ecosystems are starting to pick them up and weave them into their default development processes. So that community is on fire as well, and congrats to them for hitting the general availability milestone, but also continuing to build on that work. I want to highlight the work of the Best Practices Working Group. This is a group that is focused really on the educational side of what we do at the OpenSSF, and they've been developing not only courseware that we've deployed, that thousands of people have now taken and started to certify against, but also some really concise guides and other one-pager types of publications to help developers at every point in their no matter where they are as developers, if they're core like system developers or they're just assembling bits to ship out, how can we help developers be smarter consumers of open source code from a security point of view? And then conversely, how do we help open source developers really signal to their end users that they take security seriously? And so it's been great to see this work come out, as well as other work such as the CVD guide, helping developers understand how to publish when they find a vulnerability, what's the process for coordinating that disclosure out there in the world. Really important stuff. We've also been focusing quite a bit on trying to make sure that we internationalize our work and reach out to developers in Asia Pacific, the Asia Pacific region, make sure we're appropriate for the European markets, everywhere in India, also everywhere where there's development taking place, which is really a global phenomenon. You have to go to people where they are. You have to go to them in the languages they understand and the context they understand. And so we've localized our website into Chinese as another example. Translating essential training materials and other works into Japanese and other languages is also a priority for us going forward this year. We've had a lot of new projects come in over the last few months. One of the ones that I think was most interesting is the S2C2F framework for consuming open source code and having a framework for understanding when you should be doing updates and those sorts of things. This complements SALSA in a really big way, and I can't wait to see how we piece these different things together into a unified picture, and that'll be something that I think we'll talk about a bit more in a bit. A lot of this can be found by reading the 2022 annual report that we published at the end of last year. Obviously, there's been a few things that have happened since then, like SALSA, but we're really proud of this work, and I want to highlight Jennifer Bly, who did a tremendous amount of this work assembling the report, working with all of our different communities to really get a sense of what happened and help us all take a retrospective on that, and a bit of a victory lap, too, for all the hard work that was done. We've also been out there in the world since the last time we met in Austin. We've had an OpenSSF days in Europe, as well as another in Japan. Japan has also hosted a meetup in Tokyo. So thank you to Nori, who's helped pull that together, and some of our members here from Hitachi and Sony and others who've also helped make that happen. We had a cloud. There was obviously Cloud Native Security Con, where we actually had a presence, and this was kind of fun. We had a booth out there amongst all the other vendors, and really engaging with the cloud native community one-on-one on here's the technologies, here's what being a part of OpenSSF is about. We'd love to do more of this. We've got budget to do a little bit of this, but what really helps us have that leverage out there is having volunteers who can help us with advocacy, who can help us man that booth, who can help us find other events that are worth us having a presence at, or even they could help represent the OpenSSF at those events. And I'll talk more about that in just a bit. Pivoting a bit to the future, there's a couple of announcements that we're making today that I really want you all to feel like you're amongst the first to hear. One of the big ones is that we've had this project that has had some really interesting impact in the last year called Alpha Omega. It's kind of the peanut butter and jelly sandwich of security because it has two really interesting things we've put into one. And this has really been under the guidance of both Michael Scavetta and Eric Brewer at Microsoft and Google Eric Brewer from Google, Michael Scavetta from Microsoft, who have really led us down a path to look at two things. One is providing grants to open source foundations to do capacity building, and that really could be in the form of helping them implement security policies, helping them implement things like SigStore or Salsa, helping them staff security teams that can help with coordinated disclosure or setting other standardized policies. And through that, we've made grants to the Rust Foundation, to Python, to NPM and jQuery, and a bunch of others that some of which are actually still in the mix. So there's some really exciting new announcements coming up in that sector. But what we're announcing today is that both Microsoft and Google have reiterated their support for this program to the tune of an additional $2.5 million each. So thank you tremendously to those two. I also want to note Amazon has contributed as well to this project in the last year, and we're opening the door to a generalized support model as well for additional companies that wish to support our work or even get involved in what we're doing. The second half, the jelly side of that sandwich, is the scanning infrastructure that Jonathan and Yesenia, who are here today, you look for the hat that Jonathan's wearing, and Yesenia's next. The two of them have been building up both the operational side as well as the policy side for going out and finding and fixing security holes in open source projects at scale. This is a little bit harder work than it might even sound, but going and finding all these low-lying defects, all these simple bugs that frankly don't get addressed, and issuing pull requests against them in the order of thousands or tens of thousands at a time, harder work than it sounds, and with a very lean team, we're getting ready to start our campaigns in that direction. So that's the work of the Alpha Mega project, and again, very grateful to Microsoft and Google for their support. We have new members every month who are joining the OpenSSF. We have over 100 supporting organizations now that believe in our work, that are involved in some way, but also financially supporting the work that we do. So I want to extend heartfelt thanks to Hitachi, to Lockheed Martin, to Salesforce, and to SAP for joining the project and putting their weight into and giving us the resources to do what we need to do. And then I have another really big announcement, which is we've decided, we have a bunch of open job recs. We were looking at how to build the team. I was looking at recruiting a chief of staff and trying to think hard about, well, what kind of additional really leadership help does the project really need? I come from a background deep in open source software, deep in kind of the nerd diplomacy side of the world, but I'm not a security person at heart. I haven't been steeped in SIEM, in regulated industries and how they use security practices and policies. I knew I could tap all of you for that help, all those of you coming from banks and other secure environments, but the leadership of this project also needed somebody who understood that background extremely well. And as it turns out, there's folks in that industry who also understand open source pretty well too. So with that, I'd like to introduce to you the new general manager for the Open Source Security Foundation, Omkar Arasaratnam. Omkar? And he'll come up to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Brian. Hello, room. Hello, Internet. Hello. First off, I want to give my sincere thanks, and I'd love a huge round of applause for all the work that Brian has done in leading the foundation thus far. So thank you, Brian. You like my Jordans? This is an honor. I began my career as an open source geek, kernel contributions, PowerPC 64 maintainer for Gentoo. I heard some groans in the audience, that's okay. And then I spent the last 2 decades doing security. So this, I feel, is a role where it's the culmination of the experience that I've gained over the last 2.5 decades. I am 10 days in, so I feel like I've got it all figured out. But in case you have any sage words of advice, wisdom, guidance, I'm here, I'm listening. I'm going to be partnering very closely with Brian, who will remain involved with the project. He's not going anywhere. He's the CTO. And I'm going to be working very closely with the governing board, the TAC, as well as our work groups and our associated projects like Alpha Omega. And my hope is that we can all work together to really increase the security within our software supply chain for the greater public good. But with that said, I'm going to be brief, and I'm going to be out, and I'm going to hand it back over to Brian. Thank you, everyone. Look forward to seeing you today.
Thank you, Omkar. Great. And as he mentioned, you can't get rid of me that easily. I'm sticking around as CTO, and this is actually something I've done a couple of times in my career, where I brought in somebody to really collaborate in a co-leadership kind of role. And so already it's very clear Omkar and I have very complementary kind of backgrounds and interests, but also very specialized different skills. So we really look forward to helping this community continue to grow and continue to meet the challenges that you all put at our shoes as the staff to go and help you go out and accomplish. So thank you, Omkar. I want to end just this kind of intro with kind of sharing what, at least from my point of view, are some of the guiding lights for us as a community through the rest of this year into next year and beyond. Because as a lot of great stuff has been happening, you could say on the ground, you know, in terms of like the substance of what this community is creating, there's also been a lot of desire to have kind of an overarching both view of what we're doing and understand where collectively we could go to solve some of the big problems that have been laid at our feet, right? So the first I wanted to highlight on is it's really important for us to help new users coming in, new contributors coming in, new folks who who are aligned with our mission and goals and want to get involved, to understand how we work, to understand how all these things fit together. And so we've thrown out there this really confusing, very org chart kind of centered kind of view of how things work, which isn't all that helpful, frankly, but instead what we should be doing is thinking about how to provide something that looks a little bit more functionally at how the different projects work together perhaps across the software development lifecycle. Perhaps there's other ways to visualize this. So Krob has been leading this group called the Diagrammers Society, which is a group of folks trying to map this out and understand what is the most useful way to visualize this kind of, I don't want to say chaos, but this kind of Brownian motion, is probably saying the same thing, of activity going on inside the OpenSSF. And it's hard work, but what we hope comes out at the end of it is this better kind of understanding both of who we are and where we're going and collectively what's possible. So if any of you are interested in this, any of you have kind of special skills in this front, please get involved in the Diagrammers Society. We're also starting to talk at the TAC level, at the governing board level, and within our projects at how do we take these disparate pieces and where they meet up, get very clear about that boundary between them, but then also talk about how to pull them together into something like what GitHub did with NPM provenance, but do that for other language ecosystems, and then do that for downstream as well. So that what we can do is work with our industry and work with the open source ecosystem to come up with traceability and provenance and guarantees and all the kinds of things that people are expecting from us throughout the software supply chain. And in doing that, hopefully end up with a set of systems that generate more secure software by default, that make it easier to figure out where the real problem areas lie in the code. You know, where is the next log4shell likely to hit, right? Could we go and find that and proactively, collectively go and invest to try to do the kinds of third-party auditing or other better work to shore up those kind of red spots on our dashboard, right? That's only possible if we collectively implement the same standards, the same processes, and increasingly the same tools to be able to get there quickly. So thinking about that, sometimes the term Sterling toolchain has been thrown out to describe this kind of effort, but it really is about getting these things woven into all the different tool chains out there, even into commercial tooling, so that it becomes the new default. And so this is a huge task, but it's something that I know the TAC is starting to think about, we're starting to think about, and we could, if any of you out there kind of specialize in this kind of systems thinking applied to security, we would love your help. Finally, you know, a year ago, we released this thing called the OpenSSF Security Mobilization Plan. And it called for 10 different streams of effort focused on kind of a top-down view of where the problems are out there and what we should be addressing. And that document was kind of a true north document. Here's what's possible if we were to organize ourselves. And frankly, it does require some funding to get certain things to run, to get certain things even started. We want to know, is this possible? Is that possible? That work did trigger some of the funding that came in for Alpha Omega. That work has also triggered some investments into Scorecard, into other projects, so we've been really happy to see that. We've also been happy to see proposals line up to go and invest in education, in even some things that we're not yet doing, such as an emergency response team. So those efforts are gearing up. But in the meantime, it's been a year, and it's worth updating this document and worth setting out a path for what is our next true north, or series of true norths. What's the plural of north? In our work that we can then map to all the efforts on the ground and really look for new places to invest. And so that work is also ongoing, and we're starting to organize that now. And it is also a place that we could use help, but it has to be help that's matched to a willingness to do the hard work, right? And a willingness to go and help us find the resources to do that work. Meanwhile, we continue to have events. We're going to go to Europe in September and have an OpenSSF day there. So if any of you either plan to be there or have colleagues that are there, want to help us make that a success, please let us know. That'll be September 18th in Bilbao, Spain, which is, I haven't actually been to Bilbao, so I'm really looking forward to that. We're also really keen to have a presence at other developer events, at other places where we can reach out beyond our kind of self-selected ecosystem. So next week, I'll be in Boston at this MIT Sloan CIO Symposium, trying to talk to the business crowd about what we do. We're hoping to do an open source security meetup there is one in June in Tokyo. Nori in the back here, you can ask him about that, and he can help direct you to that. And then there's another conference in the end of November in Denmark called SCORED, for the Software Supply Chain Offensive Research and Defenses program, that has a CFP closing pretty soon. So we wanted to highlight that as well. We'd love to see folks supporting that effort. Finally, we're also announcing today, understanding what the market needs is a big challenge. And we all have kind of our intuition, and everything in open source software is kind of done by those who show up, one of my favorite phrases. But understanding what the market really needs is a challenge. And we want to be building for that broader market rather than just for ourselves. So we are getting out there a survey that we're launching today. We'll have it open for the next few weeks. We're looking for as broad a participation in that as we can. So not just consider filling it out yourself, but going to your customers, your partners, other people out there we'll be tweeting about this and posting to Mastodon and all the other fun places about this survey, but your help in getting the word out about that would be great. And with that, I just again want to extend a heartfelt thanks to all of you in the open source ecosystem, in the Open Source Software Foundation ecosystem, who have been helped make the last year just an amazing year for all of us. It's really the power of the community that is how any of this is possible. Us up here on stage and on staff, we're here to support, we're here to facilitate, but we're just here to help channel the substance that all of you bring and the broader ecosystem brings. So it's been really great to been a part of that, and we're really looking forward to the work over the next year.